I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. You know, one of the benefits of a show like ours is that we get to go beyond the surface of stories to really get in depth on the issues. And we often follow up on them and see how they've changed over time. Well, one of those stories has to do with the school board down in Newberg. Last week, we told you about some big financial issues in the district. It's suddenly millions of dollars in the hole. That news came as a real surprise to the school board. But after checking our archives, maybe it should not have been so surprising. It's our big story tonight. Let's start with a bit of background. We started early covering Newberg back in 2021. It was a story that just kept on developing and kept on giving. First, a conservative majority was elected to the school board, and one of the big changes they made was to ban Black Lives Matter and pride displays at schools. The board extended the ban to anything that they deemed a political symbol. The ban drew a lot of protests and backlash, and the superintendent at the time, Joe Morlock, said he would not enforce the ban because he believed it was not constitutional. So the conservative board on the school board fired him. That decision led to a lot more backlash. There were protests outside the district headquarters, and the board's more liberal minority spoke out against it. Here's what former school board member Brandy Penner told the rest of the board after Morlock was fired in November of 2021.
And I am certain that this will have rippling effects for months and years to come. And I doubt that all four of you will even be here when the rebuilding really gets to beginning and when it really starts to happen. This is going to set our district back a decade. And not only that, but like I said in my opening statements, it is our children who will suffer. And it feels that that is the point. I fully expect that this will just be added to the mountain of litigation that these four board members have currently got us into.
Well, yes, indeed. We are going to check back in with Brandy in just a minute. That statement was 2.5 years ago, by the way. In that time, the district lost several lawsuits over the political symbols ban, and guess what? It was deemed unconstitutional. Now, most of the conservative majority of the board was later voted out. One of them did resign. But before that happened, they hired a controversial new superintendent named Stephen Phillips. Phillips had been the superintendent of the Newberg School District, where he was placed on administrative leave during an investigation into the way he handled abuse claims. And before that, he was forced to resign as the deputy superintendent of the Beaverton District for sharing derogatory social media posts about immigrants. Now he's facing calls to resign from the Newberg District over this newfound budget crisis. Last month, an independent auditor told the school board they're about $4 million in debt, and they have until the end of this month to figure it out. The biggest areas where the budget was overspent include special education and transportation, but the school board and the superintendent's offices are also hundreds of thousands of dollars in the red. Superintendent Phillips says it all happened because the district got less money from the state than they were expecting and that student needs were higher than expected. The school board said this news came as a real shock that they'd been told repeatedly by Phillips. They say that the district would end the year with a big surplus.
I guess I'm more curious about how we got here with the numbers that we've been having compared to all of a sudden this. I'm confused. I think I'm not alone. I don't know if there are answers or if this is the time or place, but this is bad. This is really, really not good.
That is correct. The current board was surprised, but when we got in touch with Brandy Penner this week, remember her from earlier? Well, a former school board member who predicted some of this back in 2021 says she saw the writing on the wall.
If there was ever going to be something to be completely wrong about, I desperately wish it had been this. But it was incredibly clear from the beginning that the majority four board members were not making decisions in the best interest of children. They were not making decisions in the best interest of our financial standing as a district. And I knew that that was going to continue. There was nothing necessarily to stop them while they were in those positions, and they had free reign to do that. And I think what's happening now is the ripple effect and the repercussions of all of those actions that were put in place, in 2021.
Penner says this is not the first time the district has been in financial trouble and that they and the former superintendent had worked for years to make sure it would not be back in the red. And yet, here they are.
So when I joined the board in 2017, we did not even have an ending fund balance policy at all. And so every year it was kind of like, well, whatever's left over, that's our ending fund balance. So when I joined in 2017, I think our ending fund balance that year was like a little over $100,000, which is horrible for a district budget, that at the time was around, I believe around $60 million. And so as a board, we came together and said, oh my gosh, we're not being fiscally responsible by not ensuring that we have these funds at the end of every year. So we created that policy. And then we ensured that district over, I think it's now like 24% of the budget it's unconscionable. There's no way that in any other setting, there wouldn't be mass resignation from leadership in this situation.
Well, as a result of that, the kids in Newberg are going to see significant cuts over the next school year, cuts to staff, and there are already discussions happening about potential furlough days for staff as well. And speaking of Newberg and political symbols, police there are now investigating a possible bias crime after someone fired what appears to be a BB gun at a pride flag that was hanging in the window of the public library. Every year for Pride Month, the Newberg Library hangs the flag there, but someone took a shot at it last night.
I was angry, and I was also profoundly disappointed that somebody would do this. I'm hoping that someone has to pay restitution for this.
We'll see. Today, Newberg's mayor told the library staff to put more of the flags up to show that they will not be intimidated. This week, Pacific Power announced it agreed to pay a total of $178 million to over 400 plaintiffs to cover damages from the 2020 wildfires in Oregon. It's the latest multi-million-dollar payout from the utility, which is still not out of the woods yet. Ongoing lawsuits could leave the company on the hook for billions of dollars. And this latest settlement comes on the heels of even more bad news for the utility. Oregon regulators rejected a proposal by Pacific Power to limit its liability when it comes to future wildfires. Here's what's happening. The company was trying to protect itself in the future. It wanted regulators to agree that they'd only have to pay economic damages in cases of negligence and misconduct on their part. This all happened following a case last year when a jury found Pacific Power was negligent and reckless when it came to some of those 2020 Labor Day fires. Regulators shut down the company's request, though, saying it's just too broad and likely against the law. It means in specific cases where the company is found to be at fault, customers will still be able to sue for punitive, emotional, and other types of damages. In the ruling, regulators recognize that Pacific Power is in kind of a tough spot at great risk of sparking wildfires and open to all kinds of lawsuits. But they said this request is not the right step, not the right first step anyway, to address that. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on our big story from last night. We talked about the Transportation Roadshow, where ODOT director and a bipartisan group of Oregon lawmakers are traveling around the state. They want to hear what you think about transportation in your area. But the main reason for the show is to send a warning shot about ODOT's budget gap. That's a cool $1.7 billion, yep, with a B, billion dollars, and the potential solutions that could come out of Salem to fix it next year. In an ODOT video, they list options like expanding the pay-per-mile program, which they call user fees. They could raise fees at the DMV for things like registration and titling. They could use general fund dollars, and they could also raise the gas tax and then tie everything to inflation in order to keep pace in the years to come. If I were a betting man, I would imagine that we're going to see a little bit of all those things in the future. But many of you say of those options on the table, those DMV fees are the ones that are already high enough.
My God, if they raise them, no wonder nobody's getting their cars registered. It's already so high now they can't afford to register the car. All these taxes they want to put, how about let's cut the PERS system out? How about let's make the ODOT workers pay for their own retirement so we don't have to pay for that? How about let's do something else? People are going to be leaving Oregon. You're not going to be able to afford to register a bicycle here anymore. It's ridiculous.
All right, thank you for that, Kevin. Obviously fired up. Rhonda wrote to us, it would greatly help the tax revenues if registration of vehicles was enforced. Some of us pay our registration fees, but I see numerous non-licensed, non-registered vehicles every day. Another viewer named Terry agreed.
How many times have I seen people driving around with expired plates? How about going after some of them and getting some of the money that is really out there. It could be thousands, if not millions. Go after these people, make them pay.
And Marvin wrote in to say on our YouTube page, DMV fees are high enough already. ODOT needs to get more creative, streamline personnel, cut administrative fat, consider using the kicker rebate. Oregonians are overtaxed, and it's still not enough. It's easy to waste other people's money when taxpayers are seen as an endless source of revenue. We've been warning you about ODOT's money troubles now for quite some time, so don't be surprised by big changes that will affect you and your bank account coming out of the 2025 legislative session. Coming up next on the story now, a private developer wants to build affordable housing complex in South Portland, but there's a problem. A homeless camp that keeps on coming back despite being removed several times. So what happens next? Blair Best will join us to explain when this story returns. Well, it's no secret that Portland needs more affordable housing, but a homeless camp south of downtown is getting in the way now of a private developer trying to do just that. As Blair Best reports, the developer says the future of the housing complex he's trying to build is in jeopardy now because of the camp that just keeps coming back.
The sound of moving out.
Sigh, you know?
Dreaded by those on Portland streets.
It makes me feel like people think I am not, like I have no value.
Amber among the homeless people who stay where South Corbett Avenue meets Wood Street, on the outskirts of downtown across from a medical school. Something about this spot keeps people like her coming back, despite camp removal crews showing up on repeat. Their latest attempt was Thursday morning.
No, I've been living in this spot twice. I don't know, it just seems homely. There's not a lot of people.
It's also where Mark Madden, a private developer, wants to build affordable housing.
If we can't guarantee that safe and secure environment, we can't build. Quite frankly, everyone's scared in the area.
For 2 years, his team has been waiting to build on this lot surrounded by the homeless camp that keeps coming back.
It's almost gotten to be like a little war with the guy, you know what I mean? It's almost like I feel like coming back just to spite him.
As soon as the city makes a decision to actually act and take them away from this area permanently, then we can go ahead and build.
A spokesperson for the mayor's office tells KGW records show their teams have checked on the site 7 times and in the past 2 weeks removed it twice. The city's housing team is finding ways to support the private developer through the construction process.
I think sooner or later there will be a consensus at the city that if they don't make all of downtown Portland safe and secure, it will become a ghost town.
I'm not the problem, you know, but them saying I'm the problem just for being here, I don't understand it.
Blair's with me now. All right, Blair, so what's going to happen with the affordable housing? Is the developer calling it quits?
He's fortunately not. He's not pulling out just yet. Instead, he's looking ahead at the upcoming election season, hoping that change inside City Hall will result in change on Portland streets. Now, he has plans to develop several hundred affordable housing units in this area, specifically for the workforce, seeing as there are several schools and hospitals nearby. But again, he says he will not start building until he is confident that the city has come up with a long-term solution to this crisis and that homeless camps won't threaten his buildings or his residents.
Wow, how frustrating. Okay, so we've seen the kind of rinse and repeat effect of the city's camp removal crews. Aren't the homeless people supposed to be getting housing or tiny homes or something through all this?
Well, they are, and that sometimes happens, but today was actually a good day. Today, the city outreach team was here and they referred 11 people into shelter. We're told they'll be going to those city-run tiny home villages. And I don't know if you can see them now. There's about one person here behind me at the end of the block. There was a little bit ago, there was a large group. I went up and talked with them, and they're part of the people, or part of the group of people that were referred to the shelter, but they're still out on the streets, and that's because they were just put on a wait list. So it's unclear how long it'll actually take for them to get into that tiny home. But the city also tells us they're looking at ways to secure this site. Now, reading between the lines here and going off of what we've seen in the past, that could mean putting up fencing or putting in boulders to deter homeless camps. So we'll see what ends up happening here.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Blair. Appreciate you using your expertise to bring us that story. And now it's your time to chime in. Your turn to chime in. Got those mixed up. I can hear some of you out there just seething about this. Send us your thoughts, will you? Email thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Don't go anywhere. We're talking about the 80th anniversary of D-Day, heading into the KGW vault when the story returns.
History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. Go to the other cemeteries in Europe where our fallen heroes rest. Go back home to Arlington Cemetery. Tomorrow, I will pay respects at Pointe du Hoc. Go there as well and remember, the price of unchecked tyranny is the blood of the young and the brave. In their generation, in their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty.
President Biden in Normandy, France today, marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day, June 6, 1944. It was a turning point of modern history as the largest group of military forces ever assembled. 160,000 Allied forces landed on the beaches of Western France. It turned the tide of World War II at the cost of thousands of lives. 3,000 American soldiers, sailors, and pilots died in just the first 24 hours of the D-Day invasion. One of those men who stormed the beaches 80 years ago was an Oregonian named Ashley Robert Russell. According to the Oregon Historical Society, you're looking at the last known photo of Russell, which was taken on D-Day as he filled his helmet with water. He was one of the first to land in France that day. The Historical Society still has letters that he wrote to his family back home. This letter is dated 10 days after the D-Day invasion. Russell started it with saying, "Dear Mom and Pop." Born in 1922, Russell was a well-regarded young artist in Portland before heading off to the war. Among his works in the Historical Society's collection are several paintings of the people and scenes he witnessed in Portland's jazz clubs in the 30s and 40s. Russell was killed by a German sniper in Normandy on July 15, 1944, less than a month after he wrote that letter to his parents. 4 years later, in November of 1948, Ashley Robert Russell's parents received this letter in the mail from the Secretary of the Army. Their son was posthumously awarded a Purple Heart. Another Oregonian who bravely fought on D-Day was KGW's own Jack Capel. Drafted at the age of 19, Capel was among the first waves of troops on Normandy's Utah beach with the Army's 4th Division. We went into the KGW vault and found a segment from our farewell to Capel back in 2000, where Jack talked about his D-Day and his service.
Then came HR, and the assault troops slipped over the side and down into the barges.
We landed far enough out there that I actually had to swim to get to shore, yeah.
You won't hear Jack brag about it, but if you probe, you will hear the stories of a war hero.
But I could never bring myself to shoot a guy who surrendered, like some guys did, or a guy who I thought was more or less defenseless, you know. If the guy was shooting at you, no problem.
The American GIs were isolated into small groups and then ruthlessly slaughtered.
Jack had been in combat for 6 months when the Battle of the Bulge erupted in Belgium. Jack was admitted to a military rest camp for a 2-day respite, a chance to sleep in a bed and take a shower. But after just one night there,
this officer comes in there and says, "Back to the line, everybody back to the line." And boy, no way, everybody yelled, "We're not going back. We've got one more day here." And so this officer realized he wasn't going to do anything with us, so he went out, and a while later a colonel came up there, a full colonel, and he comes up there and he says, "Everybody back to the line or else you'll be shot for desertion." And so we reluctantly went down, loaded up the trucks, and started going back.
Jack was wounded once, catching on fire when a shell hit a nearby can of gasoline. He also shot down this German plane with a machine gun, and he talks about it with a humility that is his signature.
And that was a tremendous coincidence or piece of luck that I happened to shoot that plane down.
By the way, we heard from a viewer named Rob this week who remembered hearing from Capel shortly after the World War II movie Saving Private Ryan was released back in 1998. Remember that? Rob was struck by Capel's emotional reaction to the film back then. Impressive memory, Rob. We managed to track down that segment as well.
I'll see you on the beach.
Saving Private Ryan is more than just a movie to some people.
Got to me very close.
News Channel 8 weekend meteorologist and World War II veteran Jack Capel was a 20-year-old Army private when he took part in the Normandy invasion in 1944.
There's never been a movie made that I know of that's ever been anything like this one. They've all been glamorized. There was absolutely nothing in that movie that was glamorized.
The authentic combat scenes leave little to the imagination.
The only thing that was not shown graphically in the movie, something you can't show, that's because it's smell. The smell of the dead is something you're never without.
I mean, where's the sense of risking the lives of the 8 of us to save one guy?
The movie also brings out the personality dynamics that evolve on the battlefield.
Most of us, however, were not quite as nervous as those fellows were, would not show it because we were trying to cover up our fear, I suppose, what you might say. It was just a sort of a false braggadocio we had, I suppose.
The movie is intentionally disturbing. Jack Capel is glad he saw it, but wonders if it might be too much for some people.
I can understand why young people might not want to see that, but maybe they wouldn't believe it. But they should if they really want to know what happened.
Jack Capel retired from KGW in 2000 after more than 40 years here. In 2007, a book was published called Surviving the Odds, which recounted his experiences in World War II. He died in 2009 and was given full military honors when he was laid to rest. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our collective story, the peace and the war and all of it never ends. It just keeps going. The good stuff's coming your way next. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night, 6:30.